Let us pray. Almighty God, we who have called us to govern this province, we ask your help to make decisions and laws that will be just and will promote the interests of the people. Almagtige God, ons bid dat u gedurende ons vergaderings ons die nodige wysheid sal gee en ons motiewe suiwer sal hou en dat u ons sal help om ons tekortkominge te oorkom en al ons besluite aan u op te dra. Sikelele lezwi letu nabantu balo umisili ukulungu kwipondo letu. Kosi sikelela I Afrika tina bantwana bayo kokelo in kokelizayo iniki ukolo I Afrika. All this we beg in your holy name. Amen. You may be seated. Order. Good afternoon, honourable members. To our guests in the gallery, good afternoon, welcome. You do know that we welcome you to the sitting. You're not, however, allowed to participate in any of the proceedings. Thank you. I'd now like to call the House to order. We proceed to interpellations as printed on the order paper, and I have been told that there is only one interpellation this afternoon. So I'll move straight on, and I'll say I recognize the Honourable Minister of Social Development, Minister Fritz.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. The Provincial Youth Development Strategy prioritizes the provision of targeted and high-quality services, opportunities and support to young people, not in education, employment and training. These are young people whose job prospects are severely limited by them not having the required education, skills and competencies to access higher-level jobs in the economy. Their sense of hopelessness and faith in their future often leads many of them to be the forefront of often violent protests or gangsterism that have become a feature of our communities across the country and particularly in the Western Cape. The Department Youth Development Strategy Subgroup Program works with a range of funded organizations and our youth cafes to ensure that needs youth are exposed to integrated soft and skills programs that both improve their skills base and prepare them for the world of work. Young people who participate in our programs are linked to opportunities such as further studies, internships, learnerships, and access to contract and permanent employment. The second part of the question of the interpellation, over the last 3 years, more than 33,000 keep quiet please. And listen.
Order, please.
Over the last 3 years, yes, I am officially. Madam Speaker,
I will protect the Speaker on the floor.
Over the last 3 years, more than 33,000 needs youth have had access to such programs through the Youth Development Program in conjunction with the Office of Minister Fritz. My office has also engaged in an extended process of youth outreaches across the provinces between April and November 2017. And we are going to continue this year to absolutely accelerate our youth empowerment, specifically for you, Honourable Member. The communities reached in these outreaches include Merweville, Ashton, Bredasdorp, Brandwag, Pickelsdorp, Veldrif, Saldanha, and Maritzburg. And it's so great to say, Madam Speaker, that in a number of these places we've now opened youth cafes from the outreaches. Well,
order, please, Minister Fritz. Kindly take your seat. No, the time is not up. Honourable members, interjections are allowed. If you wish to pose a question to the Minister, kindly do it through the chair, please, and not directly to the Minister. And Minister, if I may ask or request that you speak to the chair I think in that way we'll make progress. Thank you. You may proceed.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And in these outreaches, a total of 708 NEETs youth were exposed to a range of opportunities and information that can be used to chart a way forward in their lives. Recently, my office also successfully facilitated a 5-day entrepreneurial development training course for NEETs in the Montague.
Sorry, there's a member on the floor.
Just take his hand out of his pocket, please, when he reads this. Please do just...
Honourable Yankee, sorry, that is not a point of order. You may proceed, Minister.
In Montague, Ashton and Robertson, Deputy Speaker. These initiatives will be intensified in the coming financial year with a specific focus on ensuring that the number of needs and specifically young people placed in jobs are increased. We must place people in jobs. Yes.
Thank you, Minister. Your time is up. I now see the Honourable Botha.
Thank you, Speaker.
Honourable Yankee, today you and I are going to get into a debate. Asseblief interjections are allowed, but no running commentaries, please. Thank you. Thank you so much. You may proceed, Honourable Botha.
Thank you, Minister, for your response. It is pleasing to hear the efforts of the Western Cape Department of Social Development in addressing this issue. We have with the needs. It goes without saying that this DA-led government is deeply concerned about and cares for these young people who do not have access to opportunities. It is commonly known that the very age group, the 18 to 25-year-olds, that's been targeted by the Youth Development Strategy has the highest unemployment statistics, and not only in the Western Cape, but the entire country. It is therefore vital that the Department's Youth Development Strategy continues to provide support and create opportunities for all young people across the province. I'd like to, however, stress that it is especially our young people in rural communities who is part of the needs that should be afforded these opportunities. I therefore welcome the establishment of the Department's youth cafes in Oudtshoorn, George and Groot Brak Rivier. These, along with the one whom I recently opened in Piketberg as well, seeing that their purpose, amongst others, is to develop young people's skills so that they can become employable, I believe that the department is on the right track. An issue that continuing to plague our communities, however, Minister, is the number of young people that's involved in gang activities, and it is especially these needs youth that are involved with and in the criminal element. What is further concerning, Minister, is that the criminal element and the gang activity is deepening its claws in our rural areas. Years ago, when we referred to gang activities, we would be limited to having gang activity on the Cape Flats and in certain pockets in rural communities. But now, however, it is becoming the norm. We need our youth cafes and other interventions to be effective in not only our youth out of the needs, but also out of these criminal activities.
Thank you. I see the Honourable Makaleni.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Speaker, sorry.
Thank you.
Unfortunately,
Honourable Yankee, you have a member on the floor. Please afford the member the opportunity to speak. Jou beurt sal kom asseblief. You may proceed.
Thank you, Deputy. Thank you, Speaker. Unfortunately, the youth of this province have nothing to be thankful for. This provincial youth development strategy is supposed to be the model and the panacea of all youth development, but it is a shame. Number one, it is structurally out of step with international norms and national guidelines. Youth is usually people up to the age of 35, and this province is only up to the age of 25. Secondly, it is inherently discriminatory as it leaves out young people between... Can I proceed?
You may proceed.
It is inherently discriminatory as it leaves out young people between the age of 25 to 35 who need proper protection. Thirdly, it is systematically designed to exclude the young people of the working class as the DA only has a place for those who are so-called fit for purpose. Up to 40% of the provincial population is not properly empowered, and they are left in areas where education and training does not reach all. It is said 32% of youth are in needs category, and strategically can only assist, and this strategy can only assist, as the minister alluded, 708 young people in the entire province, and therefore it is still nowhere close to what it's supposed to do.
Thank you, Honourable Makaleni. I now see the Honourable Botha.
Thank you, Speaker. Minister, how are you differentiating between the specific needs of these young people that form part of the needs, and how are you addressing it? And it is important to understand this, as each individual and community needs are different to one another. And with regards to your department's restorative programs for youth in conflict, how are they made aware of the opportunities that are presented in these programs? And in addition to this, would you say that the Youth Cafe model can be regarded as a best practice vehicle to address the needs? And of the 708 that you have quoted, how many have had the opportunity for long-term employment?
I see the Honourable Makaleni.
Speaker, the social-economic conditions in this province dictates that children in the working class must attend disadvantageous and under-resourced Quintile 1 to Quintile 4 schools. Research by S. van der Berg in 2015 indicates that children in Quintile 1 to Quintile 4, by the time they reached grade 4, fell behind and 40% drop out of school. Subsequently to that, another 40% drop out of school before they complete grade 10. That means they cannot read and write properly. Therefore, they cannot be better employed, which leads to poverty, and they are forced to do crime. And today, black and colored children of the working class swells the jails and the child youth care centers of this province. The DA government has no will to dismantle the apartheid legacy, and its fit-for-purpose policy perpetuates inequality, poverty, and employment, and that is bad for our young people.
Thank you, Honourable Makaleni. I see the Honourable Botha. Honourable Bianchi.
Aye. Thank you, Speaker. I want to encourage the Minister and his department to continue working with the various community-based organizations, as they have direct contact with the needs in their area, and thus better insight into what the specific needs of these young people might be. We cannot take the important role that partnerships have to play for granted, as it would be impossible to expect government to address every issue that we're faced with in the Western Cape. Furthermore, Speaker, we need to be reminded that our families are the cornerstone of our societies. There might be households with needs in the family and uncertain about how to assist their young people. Minister, how is your department empowering these families so that they are able to get their needs to access opportunities? I don't see you as part of this debate, interpellation. Minister, how is your department empowering these families so that they are able to get their needs to access opportunities that's available through your department's programs?
Thank you. I now see the Honourable the Minister.
Thank you, Speaker. I really think we must be careful not to go into a narrative of victimhood. We must be careful not to perpetuate and forget that, yes, this is my response. Listen carefully to my response.
Honourable Minister,
we must be careful that we are not just creating and perpetuating, victimhood. Let me just say and suggest to the House, I want to suggest to the House
order, please,
that young people have agency, Honourable Speaker. There's a number of young people who are amazing, who is brilliant. It's only the ANC where you're still 35, married, and you're still a youth. Hulle is ou manne. Ons soek nie vir hulle nie. Ons soek vir die kinders wat geleenthede moet kry. That must get opportunities, who's young, who's after school, find themselves in a number of departments across this province. You know, from the previous department with a pay project to every department. And we tend to focus on one department, but there's a whole host of youth development programs. Speak to the young man that I met on the first floor of the DG's office, who's he told me he's an intern with the DG. And you know how grateful he is just to get an opportunity to have a year where he can decide his future and further. So we must stop creating our young people as little enemies, because the ANC is a whole lot of enemy, you know, a victim, victim, victim. They must get out of this mold of victim. And I'm asking specifically that they really do that. We will continue, Honourable Speaker, to focus on areas where socio-economic conditions are a challenge. We will focus, we don't apologize for it. The Menenberg area we will focus on. Again, that leadership college, there's a brilliant example of personal agency, realizing that they want to get out of poverty through education. And then the Honourable Gillian, with the side remarks, you know, must really listen, because they come to the petitions committee and they raise the same stuff. So, Honourable Speaker, that is what we are saying. And I really am very, very encouraged.
Please.
Also to make the point, Speaker, that there are different projects, So the youth cafe is just one. I'm not proud as if the youth cafe is everything.
Thanks. If you could finish
Thank
up.
you.
Thank you. Members, can I please address you all? We've now just completed the interpellations. As I said, we only had one. We are now going to move to questions. I'm going to request your cooperation so that we can get through the session without too much drama. Interjections are allowed, but once 3 interjections, I consider them to be running commentary. So let's just be mindful. We're going to go to questions for oral reply, and I take it we have 1.5 hours to get through a fair amount of questions. So the first question is to the Honourable Minister, Minister Plato. Question number 7.
Honourable Speaker, thank you to the Honourable Member for the question. Honourable Speaker, it should be noted that neighbourhood watches are voluntary entities that decide where to patrol in their respective geographic area. The neighbourhood watches in the 3 mentioned areas have decided to patrol the traffic intersections as a result of the amount of robberies happening. Neighbourhood watches decide on their own where to patrol and for how long as a result of the safety situation in their respective community and determined by them. They themselves decide where and when. The department's influence is therefore very limited regarding where to patrol, although the neighbourhood watches informs the police every time when they do go and patrol, so that SAPS is aware who's on the streets for safety reasons, what they are doing, and that sort of thing, so that if there's a call from a respective neighbourhood watch, so that they can respond quite quickly. There are no standing rule in place for a neighbourhood watch where to patrol every day. If the Honourable Member is of the opinion that the neighbourhood watches must patrol those intersections more often, the Honourable Member must indicate so, and I will definitely forward the request to the respective neighbourhood watches concerned. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister. I see the Honourable Gopi.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is, were the neighbourhood watchers not been given stipend for the time that they were patrolling the robots where there's a lot of robberies taking place?
Thank you.
No, the Department of Community Safety do not pay any stipends. However, there was a firm request in this House by the Honourable Lekker, I think 3-4 meetings ago, and we are busy dealing with the Honourable Member's request, but currently, right now, no.
Thank you, Minister. Honourable Gopi.
What impact does it have to the Bishop Lavis police station in terms of shortage of vehicles while police are now standing at those robots watching people not to be robbed at that place.
Honourable Speaker, that's a completely different situation. Looking at the role of neighbourhood watchers versus the role of the police, those are notorious. It's exactly what I'm doing. You must listen.
Order, please.
Those are notorious hijacking areas and armed robbery areas. Neighbourhood watchers, and I've said it before, we mustn't put our ordinary community members into such volatile areas where they were not trained, they are not police officers. It's not for them to stop the bullets. That is the primary role of the South African Police Services. Neighbourhood watchers in the past was hit by bullets, was attacked, assaulted as a result of their interventions. They are doing a sterling job, but when it is high-profile crime like that, then it is more for SAPS to deal with. Thank you.
Thank you. Honourable Gopi, the third follow-up.
Speaker, during December and November, the neighborhood watchers were watching over Vahala Park robots and Malawi camp robots. The crime came so down in those areas during December and November. And then the stipend that they were given was stopped, and they have stopped being visible there because they were patrolling from Vahala Park next to the court up to Charlesville. They were patrolling up and down for full December and full November, and they have discontinued in January. And there is a difference between October and February. So does the minister not appreciate that there was a difference between October and January?
Thank you, Honourable Gopi.
You must keep your insults for yourself.
Yeah. Members, let's
I don't
manage
need
ourselves
that.
with dignity.
Okay, you must stop your nonsense. Let me say, Honourable Speaker,
Sorry, Minister.
that I'm speaking to the members, and the result of you speaking like that to me, you get back what you're asking for.
Minister Plato,
That's what it is.
Take your seat, please. Honourable Gideon.
Speaker, if any member speak to any member in this house, we are honourables. And that MEC must stop pointing. Call him to order.
Thank you. Chief Wali.
Fair's fair, Speaker. When
Order,
the other side repeatedly insults the minister for no reason whatsoever, when he's performing his executive duties and answering questions, and yet now they want to complain when he tells them to behave themselves, there's a problem with regard to that.
Thank you, Chief Whip. Members, if we are all honourable, then can we behave in a manner that is honourable and in a manner that is befitting of being called honourable? Sometimes I sit here and I wonder what really constitutes honourable. So my famous quote, respect begets respect. If you insult and attack, if you insult or attack someone personally, then when it comes back, it works both ways. So I'm asking both sides of the House to please ensure that you address each other in a manner that maintains the dignity and decorum of the House. Honourable Dianki, I see you.
Speaker?
Yes, you may.
I am humbly asking, from where you're sitting as a speaker, have you, as a speaker, found out that there is a member here who has insulted another member? And if we have made that conclusion, what ruling have you made on that?
Yeah.
Because you're making a conclusion that you respect, you are saying there's two sides to a problem. It seems you have identified that as a member here who has insulted a member, and please take us into your confidence.
I certainly will, Honourable Dankie. That was not a ruling. That's a general observation. We've been through one interpellation and one round of questions, and disrespect is clearly rearing its ugly head from both sides of the House. So I will revert to Hansard, and I will in need come back to the House if there was, in fact, any disrespect shown. I am appealing, though, to all of you as honourable members, because we are, you know, we harp on the fact that we are honourable. Let us then behave in a manner that is honourable and befitting of the status of this House. So we are now going to continue. Yes, Honourable Dankie.
You, Honourable Speaker, can the Honourable Dan Plato address the chair and not speak to members?
So could you take your
Kan jy asseblief daai doen?
Honourable Dankie. Honourable Dankie, now I need to call you to order because you raised a valuable point. Take your seat. You stood up and you said, can the Honourable Plato? You didn't even address me as the Speaker. So you did exactly what you're accusing the Minister of. You just did. But your finger went that way. But the point is taken. So let us play nicely now. Minister Plato, you may proceed.
Honourable Speaker, I will be very nice. I will stick to the issue. Let me address the Honourable Gopi's question through you, Honourable Speaker. The Department of Community Safety do not pay any stipends. We did raise that at MINMEC meetings with the National Minister of Police and National Treasury. They were of the opinion it is not warranted. It will cost millions and millions of rands, and government do not have the funding for that. Looking at the hundreds of thousands of patrollers and neighbourhood watch members across the country. It's too much money. What neighbourhood watches are doing, they generate their own funding. They get funding from business people, donations, etc. But in the areas in question, my department did not pay those neighbourhood watches any stipend. I will ask the administration again. I will investigate from the neighbourhood watch members concerned if the honourable member indicate they did receive funding to establish from whom did they receive the funding, but definitely not from the Department of Community Safety.
Thank you, Minister. Member Gopi, no more follow-ups. We then move to the next question. The next question 8 is again from the Honourable Member Gopi to the Minister Dan Plato. I see the Minister.
Honourable Speaker, the City of Cape Town informed me as follows. All CCTV installation costs vary according to the requirements for the site, especially related to the infrastructure that is available in the area to relay the pictures back to the CCTV control centre, where the pictures are to be viewed. The city currently has a tender in place for CCTV installations, which is awarded to 3 contractors, as the tender is subdivided into 3 tiers linked to the value of the CCTV project. Tier 1, 750,000 rand, Tier 2, 750 to 2.5 million rand, and then Tier 3, 2.5 million and above. One CCTV site could cost between 250,000 to 350,000. And the honourable member's questions with regard to specific areas mentioned, Bishop Lavis, yes, the current camera locations refer to 6 cameras that are already installed in the Bishop Lavis area and completed and in operation. And then the other question referring to Valhalla Park, we have 2 camera locations just outside of the suburb of Valhalla Park, which are already installed and also in operation. And other areas around Valhalla Park have been identified for further installation of cameras. And then with regard to Malawi Camp, Yes, the current camera locations refer to 6 cameras that are already installed and operational around the Valhalla Park settlement, specifically Robert Sebukwe and 35th Avenue. Thank you.
Honourable Gopi.
Speaker, the amounts that the MEC was quoting, how much it costs for a CCTV camera, and the stipend that the neighborhood watchers would get, which one would the minister prefer? Because as the minister is answering, there is CCTV cameras, but still the van needs to go and stand there. And the neighborhood watchers, while they were working, there was no need for a van. So, counting the money and the stipend that must be given to the neighborhood watchers.
Thank you, Honourable Gopi. Chief Wali. Order, please.
Speaker, can I get a...
Honourable Dianki, I am the speaker, not you, please.
Speaker, can I get a ruling on this matter? The honourable member on the other side now has a practice of either having a long statement and only when prompted asks a question. Or alternatively, what she's done now, she asks the question and then she motivates a question by a long statement. Now, the rules don't cater for this, and I'd like a ruling on the matter.
Thank you, Chief Whip. Member Gopi, you have asked your first question. The Minister is going to respond. Might I ask that when you frame your next 3 follow-ups, if you do them in a manner that is short and sharp. Thank you.
Honourable Speaker, I can see where the honourable member heading at with a question. As I've said just previously, stipends is currently a talking point. It's an issue. We're dealing with that. There is no finality regarding that as yet. Everybody that is unemployed in the communities want money, and they want money from government. The question is, will government's budgets be able to satisfy the payment of stipends? That is a fact. And let me say to the honourable member, let me say the member that is making the comment must also engage her national counterparts, because the firm directive, Honourable Speaker, national is not willing to pay stipends for neighbourhood watchers. I got that from the National Minister of Police, even the current new Minister of Police. I've raised it with him. His message was, it's voluntary, that is what it is. And they don't support payment of stipends for neighbourhood watch members.
Thank you. Honourable Gopi.
Speaker, my question was, why, if there are CC cameras, is there a need for a van to stand there?
Thank you.
Honourable Speaker, the fact of the matter is, we cannot expect from neighbourhood watchers to do the work of the South African Police Services. SAPS must do their work. They are the entity to fight crime first and foremost in any community, not a neighbourhood watch.
Thank you. Honourable Gopi.
Speaker, why did we pay so much for a CC camera? And the van must still stand there.
Okay. Thank you.
Honourable Speaker, let me say to you, I can't tell SAPS where to go and stand. I do not have that operational control authority to tell the police where to stand and where not. But let me tell you something else. Regardless CCTV cameras, robberies are still taking place. People still taking their chances. People don't care if there's an installation of cameras. And at the end of the day, even with cameras, the footages needs to be very, very clear to effect a conviction in a court of law. And there need to be statements given by people concerned as well. That is unfortunately how our justice system works. Thank you.
Thank you. This is the final follow-up, Honourable Gopi.
And the can the minister get us the stats when the neighborhood watches was there and when the neighborhood watches were taken over? What is the difference?
Thank you.
In writing.
I will, the honourable member asked for that answer in writing. I will definitely forward that answer to the honourable member.
Thank you, Minister. That concludes question number 8. We now move to question number 10, which is from the Honourable Member Lecker to the Honourable Minister Plato. I see the Minister.
Honourable Speaker, I have answered this question also 2-3 sittings ago. We remain completely committed as ever to see the Khayelitsha Commission of Inquiry process through with the respective community. All the recommendations, including recommendation 12, as I've said before, made by the Commission are being implemented. We are busy with all the recommendations. For the year ahead, the particular focus of the Priorities Committee in close cooperation with the SAPs will be on coordinating the strategies and services of provincial governments with the City of Cape Town and the ward councillors. That process is underway. The department has allocated 482,000 rand to assist with the implementation of community projects in this regard. The department has reported before that recommendation 12 of the Khayelitsha Commission of Inquiry, which requires the department to establish a multidisciplinary task team to draw up a strategic plan to address the issue of youth gangs, have been overtaken by recent developments within national government. The National Intelligence Coordinating Committee undertook a very extensive consultation process, which resulted in the adoption by the National Cabinet Committee on Safety and Security of a new national anti-gangsterism strategy. The Provincial Cabinet endorsed this national anti-gangsterism strategy, and the department has, with the concurrence of the Prof joint structures in the Western Cape, taken the lead in coordinating the actions required in terms of the new anti-gangsterism strategy. A priority committee has been established comprising representatives from SAPS, National Prosecuting Authority, State Security Agency, Crime Intelligence, Department of Justice, and Department of Correctional Services. Even Social Development, the Western Cape Education Department, Cultural Affairs and Sports, and also local municipalities. The Western Cape Government has also, as per the requirement of the National Anti-Gangsterism Strategy, established a provincial interministerial committee comprising of the MECs of Education, Community Safety, Social Development, Sports, Arts and Culture, as well as the regional and provincial heads of the respective departments, and also the Department of Justice, National Prosecuting Authority again, the National Department of Correctional Services, and other heads of departments. The Priorities Committee meets monthly and remains well attended by all role players. Budgets have been set aside and various consultative workshops have taken place, and a further 4 consultative workshops are already scheduled. In consultation with key role players, including those national departments mentioned, we have all nominated dedicated senior staff members to participate in the next step, which is the drafting of a detailed action plan in response to the national strategy, which is again a requirement of the National Anti-Gangsterism Strategy. In addition, the following processes and activities is currently underway. One of the sub-forums of the Khayelitsha Priorities Committee established by the police is focusing on youth. This forum looks at coordinating the activities of role players. So far, it has focused on departments of community safety and the DCAS, and also social developments, holiday programs for youth. Some of the issues raised by the Minister before. The Safer Schools Priority Committee is concerned with improving safety at schools in the province. It has identified 10 priority schools in the Western Cape province, where a coordinated basket of services are delivered, including the deployment of school safety resource officers, or SROs, as we call it, neighborhood watchers, walking buses, after-school programs, and a safety kiosk, and ensuring that lighting cameras and other security features and services are installed. SAPS will conduct regular patrols at the schools, must enter the school terrain, and must sign the occurrence book to show that they were really present and visiting a respective schools. The 10 schools include Bulumka Secondary School, Joe Slovo Secondary, Linguletu West, schools in Khayelitsha. The department has paid 3.5 million to support this initiative. The SROs and auxiliary law enforcement officers are currently undergoing training and will be deployed in the next month of June. The Department of Community Safety has continued its support and partnership with the Chrysalis Academy, an entity belonging to this department. Youth from Khayelitsha continue to be prioritized for recruitment into the program and for work placements once they have graduated. The graduates of Chrysalis were offered youth work placements, many of them, Honourable Speaker, from Khayelitsha, at violence prevention for urban upgrade sites, SAPS Khayelitsha, assisting CPFs, other state departments, the police in the area, under the partnership of the Tusong centers under the Department of Health as well. For the 2017-18 financial year, 15 youth were placed in the Khayelitsha cluster at Site 8 Fispol FCS unit and the Harare SAPS. These youth are given the opportunity to continue to the safety of their, to contribute to the safety of their community and to develop important workplace skills so that they can enter the job market afterwards. And all these processes finally is currently, as we speak, busy in continuation. Thank you.
Thank you. I see the Honourable Lecker.
Enkosi Somlomo, ndicela ukubuza through wena ukuba ngaba ndimve kakuhle na u-MEC xa ebesithi iBulumko Secondary, iJoe Slovo Secondary, abantu ababamba ucwangco ababizwa ngoba zi-school resource officers bazawubekwa phaa kwezaa zikolo ngenyanga kaJuni na? Ndisacela nje ukubuza lo mbuzo. Enkosi.
Thank you, Honourable Lecker. Minister Plato.
I'm trying to pick up the sound here. Right? There's nothing.
You do run the risk of being evicted. Thank you. So, there seemingly a problem with the translation, Minister Plato. Sorry.
Speaker,
Honourable Lecker.
my question is, I want to ascertain whether I heard the MEC correct when he said school resource officers will only be deployed at Bulumko, Joe Slovo in the month of June. I just wanted to first ascertain that.
Thank you for the clarity, Honourable Lecker. Minister Plato.
It's exactly what I've said. That is the information I received from the administration, that school resource officers are currently busy with training and will be deployed very, very shortly.
Thank you, Minister. Honourable Lecker.
Thank you, Speaker. I really appreciate the honest response that I have received from MEC 10 Plato. You know, MEC, I said time and again that so much money was spent on the Khayelitsha Commission of Inquiry, particularly because of the issues of youth, gangsters, and all. Now, part of those things was to make sure that there's safety for learners inside the school premises. I'm not talking about outside. Hence, the approach of the school resource officers. Now, what I find very strange, Speaker, is that out of the City of Cape Town's law enforcement officers that graduated in the month of March, a couple of them has been deployed in Delft. And yet, today, we're getting a response that says only in June there will be a deployment of school resource officers in schools that are in Khayelitsha. Hence, I continue to say, when are we going to get an implementation of the recommendations of the Khayelitsha Commission, particularly based on that response that I have received now? Set Master, please.
Honorable Lecker, the rules of the House require that when someone stands to a point of order, you would take your seat. Chief Whip Wiley.
Speaker, we're going to another one of the State of the Province addresses. Can we please stick to the rules of the House? You know, a short introduction followed by a question is fine, but these long soliloquies are out of the question.
Thank you, Chief Whip. The point is maintained.
My question still stands. When are we going to have a full implementation, particularly with the comparison that I've just made with the preference of Delft over Khayelitsha?
Thank you. Minister Plato. Members, can I please ask, manage your fingers and your hands?
I addressed this question during my budget speech as well. I will repeat that. One can't say because one aspect is not implemented, nothing is implemented.
Yes.
We need to be very careful for what we are saying. Let me say to you, Honourable Speaker, that despite the fact that we're busy with the training of school resource officers as part of the monies paid over to the City of Cape Town, I did extensively mention during my budgetary speech the role of walking buses as well. And just last week, and I'm willing to forward the letters to the Honourable Member, I received from many of those schools mentioned letters with regard to the success of the walking bus program at their respective schools. The headmasters of the schools, in writing to me, said that they are so happy with the program. The walking buses is making huge safety impact at the schools, on the school terrain, around the school terrain, and even in the classroom. Bullying is non-existent as a result of that. From time to time, they do stop and searches. I've seen pictures, even, and I'm willing to forward the honourable members some of the pictures as well, of the sharp objects confiscated from the learners by walking bus members. Some of them, when people in a classroom is very, very rude and doesn't listen to the teachers, they even allow a walking bus member to sit in the classroom to assist the teacher to keep control. That program is working exceptionally well. The SROs is just an added program to that, what we implement. But the walking buses implemented by my department is already there. And then I want to say to the honourable member, we receive many more requests from other schools in Khayelitsha for the same treatment. And I do have my program here. I will in this month, I think next week, I'm in Harare area, even Site C, to launch walking bus drives there as well. And I receive even letters of request from Nyanga and Gugulethu to do exactly the same. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Honourable Lecker.
Thank you, Speaker. Better street lights would reduce crime. In many instances, it has been proven that people are targeted even when they go to toilets in the informal settlement. And part of the recommendations was the fact that this was taken from a statement made by Ms. Nondumi Sopeto during the interviews when she alluded to the fact that there's a need for high mast lights. And I want to ask from Honorable Minister whether through his counterparts in the city of Cape Town, the issue of conventional lights or high mast or street lights, has that been attended to with the city colleagues? I thank you.
Thank you.
Honourable Speaker, we address these issues with the city. We have also addressed these issues at MINMEC with the National Minister. He had similar questions. And I have promised the National Minister of Police at the next MINMEC meeting to provide him with a report. I wrote to the city already to provide me with the necessary answers with regard to specific hotspot areas and very dark areas in Khayelitsha specifically mentioned. Why is it that there is no security, safety, high mast lighting in those areas?
Thank you. Honourable Eka.
Thank you. Speaker, I am concerned with issues raised in the Commission report itself, particularly when it comes to the development and extension of diversionary programs. Now, for young people and youth at risk. And I want to check from the MEC whether we've got a report that talks to the success of such programs within that Regulation 12 Commission report that is supposed to be implemented. And I want to check whether has there been any research conducted to assess the success of such programs as a result of the report itself, because it says clearly in Recommendation 12 that there must be an extension of such a report.
Thank you. I see the Minister.
We did not undertake any research to determine the success of any of our diversion programs. We can certainly look into that. If it is needed, we can do that. But I need to say to you, Honourable Speaker, that looking at even our alcohol harms reduction programs in Khayelitsha, specifically Town 2, where we piloted it, with the necessary lights we put up and how we work with the neighbourhood watches, the community policing forum. The diversionary programs in those areas are working. Amantla football, Nyanga Yetu's impact they are making. I visited the Nyanga Yetu program the other day, and let me say to you, hundreds of youngsters attending. And there's also a request for the Nyanga Yetu program to take it to other areas, other communities as well, and we're currently looking into that as well. So that program is a success. The soccer program is a major success, specifically Friday evenings and Saturdays to keep the youngsters busy. With all the other programs, even our FET colleges program, to see how many youth still today forward requests to my office and to the department. They want to enter the educational market, and our partnership with the FET colleges is really working and is another major success. But I think the honourable member is making a very valid point that maybe it is high time for us to begin to determine the necessary successes of this program, and I will definitely apply my mind to that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister. That concludes question number 10. We now move to the new questions, and question number 1 is from the Honourable Botha to the Honourable Minister of Education. I see the Minister Schaefer.
Thanks, Madam Speaker. Migration patterns from other districts and from outside the province and into West Coast schools are as follows over the last 4 years. 1,257 learners moved to the West Coast from Cape Winelands, 299 from Eden and Central Karoo, 3,485 from the city of Cape Town, 228 from Overberg, and overall 34,192 learners moved to the West Coast district from outside the province. The pattern suggests predominant in-migration into the district and higher growth in municipalities from outside the province. Thank you.
Thank you. I see the Honourable Botha.
Thank you, Speaker. Minister, With saying the numbers that you are saying, how many schools were built in the West Coast to address the growing number of learners that move to the area?
Thank you for that follow-up, Honourable Members. Since 2014, which is the subject of the question, we have built 1 new and 2 replacement schools. 1 replacement school is due to be completed at the end of this year.
Thank you. Honourable Danke, do you also have a question? Okay, no, so I'll let Honourable Buerta go, and then you'll have the next one. Honourable Buerta.
Thank you, Speaker. Minister, just on that answer, if you can just name the schools that you have mentioned, and then also what was the percentage of success in placing these learners in a particular school on the West Coast during the first term of the school, even though the application might have been after the cut-off date for applications?
Thank you.
Thank you for that follow-up. I don't have the names of the schools with me. I will forward them to you. And then, as far as the enrollments are concerned, our department has done extremely well in placing a large number of additional learners, and by the end of this term in the West Coast, there were no unplaced learners on our records. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. I see the Honourable Danke.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. MEC, I'm sure you must know this one. The 34,000 plus.
Honourable Danke, kindly speak to the Chair.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. So the 34,000 plus that the MEC has just informed us about into the West Coast, which is a very huge number, I must say. Thank you for that question. But what I'm interested in, if the Minister can help us, surely she knows now sitting there, the breakdown of this 34,000 in terms of those municipalities in the West Coast, because you have what, Saldanha, Bergrivier and so on, where each of that 34 is broken down, and further, that breakdown, can the MEC indicate in terms of race also? I'm interested. Race.
Thank you, Honourable Danke. I see the Honourable Minister.
No, I can't at this stage, Honourable Speaker. I would happily get back to the member on that issue. It is a new question. Thank you.
Thank you. If there are no further follow-ups, I move to question number 2, and that is from the Honourable Member Joseph to the Minister of Cultural Affairs and Sport. I see the Honourable Minister Marie.
Thank you, Honourable Joseph, for the question. Befondsing is aan die Eden Sportraad in die 2017-18 boekjaar toegewys vir die volgende: die Mosselbaai Fees, stapoptog vir die Big Walk, R15,000, George Fees, die nalatenskap toerusting R30,000, Lyngsburg Marathon R50,000, die Beter Tesame Spele R15,000 en die district sporttoekennings is oorbetaling vir goedere en dienste is R100,000. Befondsing het ook deur die voorwaardelike toekenning aan die Konfederasie vir die Eden Sportraad geskied. Die befondsing is spesifiek vir die implementering van sport- en ontspanningsprojekte in die distrik oorgeplaas. Die Sportraad het in die 2017-18 boekjaar R95,000 deur die voorwaardelike toekenning ontvang. In totaal is daar in 2017-18 boekjaar 'n toewysing van R305,000 oorgeplaas aan die Eden Sportraad. En die tweede deel, die volgende toewysing, is vir die 2018-19 boekjaar geoormerk. Die distrik sporttoekennings R75,000, die Beter Tesame Spele R15,000, Mosselbaai Fees, die Nalatenskapfonds R30,000, die George Fees R25,000, Nysna Oesterfees R25,000 as spesifiek van die atletiek marathon en die Oudtshoorn Fees R30,000. En onder die voorwaardelike toekenning is 'n toewysing van R101,500 vir die 2018-19 boekjaar beskikbaar gestel. Die befondsing sal na die Konfederasie oorgedra word vir die Eden Sportraad vir die implementering van sport- en ontspanningsprojekte in die Wes-Kaap en vir die boekjaar 2018-19 is daar 'n totale bedrag van R301,500 geoormerk vir die Eden Sportraad. En die tweede vraag 2 of daar riglyne is. Die riglyne word uiteengesit in die memorandum van verstandhouding wat tussen die Sportraad en departement onderteken is. Die voorwaardelike toekenning raamwerk se duidelike riglyne uiteen vir die aanwending van die toelaag En die derde deel, of die befondsing ook landelike sport insluit. Ja, die befondsing sluit die landelike sportkodes in. En die volgende munisipaliteite gaan baat by die befondsing. Mosselbaai, George, Oudtshoorn en die Knysna munisipaliteit. En die volgende sportkodes vir die 2018-19 boekjaar wat ingesluit is atletiek, boks, basketbal, skaak, sokker, netbal en rugby. Baie dankie.
Thank you. I see the Honourable Joseph.
Thank you, Speaker. I would like to thank the Minister for the response. Ik wil net vragen voor die minister vragen of daar voor transport ook voorziening gemaakt wordt. Want ik kom achter dat die vervoer en al die sportcodes een baie groot uitdaging is, minister. En dan wil ik ook vragen of die seniors of die senior groeperingen en gemeenschappen ook ingesluit wordt bij uw programma of dit bij minister Fritz' programma ingesluit wordt. Dank u.
Thank you. I see the minister.
Baie dankie. Dankie. Ek erken die vervoer is altyd 'n baie groot probleem. Dit is ingesluit, maar vervoer oorskry gewoonlik altyd die bedrag. So ek erken dit is 'n probleem, maar dit is ingesluit. En dan vir jou senior burgers is daar vir elke distrik R80,000 bewillig. Baie dankie.
Thank you. So I've seen two people, the Honourable Doug Moore.
I'd like to ask a follow-up question in the light that Member Joseph's question also referred specifically to rural sports. And in the response given by the MEC, she mentioned towns in the Eden district which are essentially urban towns. There was no mention made of what can be referred to as deep rural communities. What I would like to ask the MEC is that is she by her answer indicating that, for instance, the community of Slangrivier is not going to benefit from this particular allocation via the Eden Sports Council? Secondly, the community of Melkootfontein near Stilbaai. And finally, the further upgrading as requested by the community of Albertina. Is that not seen as a priority for her department and the Eden Sports Council?
Thank you. Minister.
Baie dankie, agbare Dakmoor. Slangrivier, Melkootfontein en Albertina is ingesluit en dit is van die projekte moet nog afgehandel word van ons vorige boekjaar. Melkootfontein het spesiale uit die ministeriële fonds geld ontvang. Ek het nie nou beskikbaar nie, maar ek kan dit aan u gee, maar dit word definitief aandag aangegee en dit word ook as prioriteite gesien.
Thank you. Honourable Doug Moore.
Thank you, Speaker. It would be appreciated if the MEC could provide the detailed information, because clearly she didn't mention that in her initial reply to Member Joseph. Thanks.
Thank you. I think that's what the MEC has indicated that she would provide it. Honourable Joseph.
Dankie, Speaker. Ik wil graag net opvolgen op die vraag wat Dakmo gevra het over die minister te vragen. Kry al die verskillende munisipaliteite of streke soos die sportraad dit uitdeel, kry elkeen 'n geleentheid of word dit op die behoeftes wat vooraf aangedui word bepaal? Of ja, wat is die kennis omtrent dit? Dankie.
Dankie, agbare Joseph. Elke sportkode en elke munisipaliteit doen 'n voorlegging. En op grond daarvan word bepaal, volgens hulle behoeftes, word bepaal watter bedrag word aan hulle gegee.
Thank you. That concludes question number 2. We've had 4 follow-ups. We now move to question number 3 from the Honourable Lekker to the Honourable Minister. I see Minister Plato.
Honourable Speaker, thank you. Also to the member for the question. The South African Police Services informed me as follows. The South African Police Service in the Western Cape has the capacity which investigates organised crime cases. The statistics mentioned in the University of Cape Town study entitled The Rule of the Gun according to SAPS, cannot be verified nor commented on, as the South African Police Service does not provide disaggregated crime statistics relating to assassinations. Thank you.
Thank you. I see the Honourable Lecker.
Thank you, Speaker. Interestingly enough, the research on the specific topic talks to, in the main, the assassination of witnesses. And it talks to the kind of contracts that are entered into by whoever is going to be conducting that particular hit. And interestingly enough, it is predominantly within the taxi industry. And my question therefore would be, having this kind of research conducted by UWC, will the MEC, together with the SAPS, look into this issue? Let's leave the assassination, but the issue of the role of the gun within the taxi industry. Is it something that is being attended to regularly? I thank you.
Thank you.
Honourable Speaker, it's a very important issue the Honourable Member raised. This is not an issue only for the taxi industry. Hits, gangster, drug hits, we see that as a regular occurrence almost every day in our community. No, definitely yes. We address this with the police regularly because it is a major problem. And it's a problem even the Honourable Premier recently in a letter raised to the National Minister of Police as well. The gun trafficking, the gun hits, if a person must go and testify in court tomorrow, today the person get gunned down, or even many at times 10 meters from the gate of the court, they get gunned down. So yes, to the Honourable Member, I think it's needed, and we will definitely raise this issue as far as we can, because it is a major, major issue in many of our communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Okay, no further follow-ups. We then move to question number 4. It's from the Honourable Gopi to the Minister, Maria.
Agbare lid vir die vraag. Die Departement van Kultuursake en Sport is by hierdie proses betrokke, maar die Departement van Plaaslike Regering is die hoofdepartement en bestuur die proses. Die Departement van Kultuursake en Sport is deel van die provinsiale taakspan van die nasionale wetsontwerp op tradisionele en Khoisan leierskap. Die taakspan is verantwoordelik daarvoor om te reageer op navraag van beide die publiek en die nasionale regering en die vereiste prosesse ingevolge die wetsontwerp te implementeer. Die Departement van Kultuursake en Sport het sy databasis van kultuurrade met die Departement van Plaaslike Regering gedeel. En die Departement van Plaaslike Regering is volgens sy mandaat verantwoordelik daarvoor om aandag te skenk aan sake wat verband hou met tradisionele en Khoisan leierskap. Die Departement van Plaaslike Regering het proaktief gewerk in die mobilisering en fasilitering van konsultasies met gemeenskappe rakende die wetsontwerp op tradisionele en Khoisan leierskap van 2015. Die Departement van Plaaslike Regering het hoofsaaklik deur middel van gemeenskapskoerante en die radio gekommunikeer. Openbare verhore is tans aan die gang. Die sekretariaat van die staande komitee het ook uitnodigings uitgestuur en my terugvoer is dat al die openbare verhore sover propvol sale getrek het. Okay.
Dankie, Agbare Gopi.
My question is the Minister satisfied with the response that the Minister is getting up till so far with the...
Ja, beslis. Okay.
Then we can move on if there's no further questions. Question number 5, the Honourable Olivier to Minister Schaefer. I see Minister Schaefer.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. In responding to this question, I must first ask whether the honourable members on the other side of the House ever actually listen to my response, as they keep asking the same questions over and over again. Any crisis is certainly not confined to the Western Cape, but any incident in school is unacceptable. As I've said before, it is our responsibility to ensure learner safety within the school premises, but many of these challenges are a result of violence within communities that then affects the school. What we have done and are continuing to do is address the behaviour of our learners in terms of conflict management, substance abuse awareness and abuse, build relationships between the parents, learners and the broader school community, and involve the local community in the school, which includes holiday and after-school programs. Train teachers, parents and learners to identify and address aggressive learners. Give schools access to school social workers and educational psychologists to provide psychosocial support. Work on ensuring that we have an accountable school management. Give learners a voice within the appropriate structures in the school, as learners need to be part of the solution. Build transparency and trust among learners, staff, the community and the school. Build a human rights culture in schools to make everyone feel welcome. In addition, workshops and training programs have been held in the following areas: National School Safety Framework, occupational health and safety, anti-bullying, creative and constructive approaches to conflict resolution and peer mediation, substance abuse and training on the use of non-invasive drug testing. Safe Schools officials are working closely with schools and partners in every sector to implement plans to safeguard our public schools. The program includes security infrastructure mechanisms such as perimeter fencing, electronic access control, burglar bars, metal detectors, and monitored electronic access control, and monitored alarm systems linked to an armed response service. We help schools to develop and implement their own individual safety plans and assist them in mobilizing community support for schools. Safe Schools also engages with school safety clusters regularly within education districts where cluster support needs are discussed and addressed. In my capacity as chairperson of the Provincial Steering Committee for Strategic Goal 2, we have made good progress in strengthening the relationships between the province and crucial national departments that have the primary mandate and budget for justice and policing, which are so crucial in maintaining safe and secure school environments. It is also assisting in planning preemptive safety-related work at schools, with a focus on ensuring that our limited safety resources are deployed when and where most needed. The SteerCom serves as an interministerial committee based on the National Anti-Gangsterism Strategy. The objective of the committee is to discuss improved mechanisms to decrease gang-related crime and to develop strategies to support our youth in order to prevent them from participating in gangsterism themselves. We are also introducing a school risk classification tool, which has been developed in consultation with the WCED, City of Cape Town, SAPS and DOCS. This tool will allow us to identify and classify existing and emerging safety risks so that the relevant security infrastructure and other resources are deployed when and where most needed. Minister Plato also has referred to the partnership we have with the City of Cape Town, where we have school resource officers in our schools. Thank you.
If there's no follow-up questions, we move on to the next question. Question 6, Honourable Gillian, again to Minister Schaefer.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. My department is not allowing Steenhof Meyer to perform at schools in the province. It is not for me or the department to allow or not allow an event of this nature, just because it happens to be on school property. According to Section 36 of the South African Schools Act, the fundraising policy of a public school is determined by the school governing body. It is therefore up to the SGB to make decisions as to who they allow to hire their halls. In doing so, I believe they should take into consideration all the opinions of the school community, but the final decision is theirs to make, not mine. The second question, whether I'll heed appeals by the public. No, I won't. The Western Cape government supports the right to freedom of speech, and I will thus not instruct the cancellation of the concert. We have, however, asked the SGB whether they have taken into consideration all the opinions of the school community in making the decision. The final decision is theirs to make. I do believe, however, that the organisers cancelled the concert. Thank you.
Achtbare Gillian.
Thank you, Speaker. Thank you to the MEC for that answer. But I want to find out from the MEC if the MEC and her department has double standards when it comes to these kind of racial issues. On the 13th of September 2017, the MEC sent a letter to Vista High School, Military Road in Cape Town, and I quote, "It has come to the attention of the WCED that certain posters in the classroom of the deputy principal has been found to be offensive to visitors at your school, etc., etc. Then also a disciplinary hearing was conducted against the deputy principal of that school, and I quote, which community members feel is a means to curtail his right to freedom of expression and his strong anti-Zionist activism. Is this department and the MEC having double standard when it comes to these forms?
Thank you, Member. Honourable Minister.
Thanks, Honourable Deputy Speaker. No, I do not have double standards. First of all, I never wrote that letter, but I think my HID did. No, I did not. No, I didn't. But in any case, it's a different issue entirely, because the posters that were up at school in the classrooms during school hours. This concert was a privately arranged concert that was after school hours. And just to prove that I don't have double standards, I today received a complaint from somebody, in fact, complaining to me that the ANC Ward 6 in Stellenbosch is having a function at Lukhof High School in Stellenbosch, asking me to cancel it. And I said, no, I would not do that, because it's up to the school to decide who they let use their halls. Thank you.
Thank you. Honourable Mitchell first. Honourable Mitchell.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And thank you to the MEC for the first two answers. My question relates to the last comment made by the MEC, and I just want commitment from the MEC that and ask her if she will prevent people such as Steve Hofmeyer and other people from utilizing school facilities to do functions in future.
Order,
Thank
Minister.
you to the Honourable Member. I don't believe that the public has yet submitted to me a list of names that the public finds reprehensible, too reprehensible to set foot on school property, and I don't think I should ask, because I suspect it might contain too many ANC politicians' names. Thank you.
Honourable Dugmore.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I'd like to ask the MEC if she regards the statements made by Steve Hofmeyer over the years, which could be described as
order,
as racist, whether she actually regards Steve Hofmeyer as a racist.
Minister Schaefer.
Honourable Deputy Speaker, I can't comment on statements unless I hear what exactly the statements are, and I would suggest that the Honourable Dugmore find that out. What I will say is that if people believe that he is guilty of hate speech, there are remedies available to people to take, and I suggest that they do that.
The last opportunity, Honourable Dugmore.
In terms of the response by the MEC, does the MEC concede that she has not bothered to actually research what it is particularly that Steve Hofmeyer has said over the years which has so offended so many South Africans? Has she not read what Steve Hofmeyer has said over the years which has caused such offence?
Minister.
Thank you. I'd like to answer the question with the question, what is that, how is that relevant to this question? The point I made was that it's not within my power to make the kind of decisions that I was asked to make, and I will not do so.
Thank you. We move on. Order. Question number 7, I understand, will stand over. We move on to question 8. Honourable Dugmore to Minister Schaefer again.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I previously reported that a second investigation commenced in October 2017. The resulting report has been finalised and referred to the SG. He, in turn, has referred it to the Department of Employee Relations for further action, and no charges have been brought at this stage. Thank you.
Honourable Dugmore.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. Given that this particular school principal, this particular school principal's monthly allowance paid for by parents was increased from 10,239 per month to 19,000 Rand a month, and finally to 24,500 Rand a month extra to her WCD salary. Does the MEC believe that it is correct that whatever other charges are brought against this particular principal, that the principal should pay back this money, given the provisions of Section 38A in regard to the adoption of budgets by schools?
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. The answer to that question, obviously, as the Honourable Dugmore should know, is that I'm the appeal authority and that any disciplinary action that may or may not be taken against a school principal is not something that I should be privy to at this stage and am not. Thank you.
Honourable Dugmore.
I would like to follow up and ask that given the MEC's response and clearly her unwillingness to in any way make a comment on what was clearly illegal and unjust behaviour has anything to do with the fact that Premier Zille, the school principal, and MEC Donald Grant were photographed together drinking wine on this particular school property, and that there in fact is a personal relationship between the Premier and this particular school.
Order. Minister Schaefer.
I'm sure the Premier's drunk wine and many schools, and her relationship, if any, she has with the school is completely irrelevant to the proceedings that we're busy with. Thank you.
We move on. Is there further follow-up? Honourable Dugmore.
I would like to ask the MEC to indicate the time frame in which this particular matter will be resolved, and whether she can express her view as to whether, in regard to the conduct of the SGB treasurer as well as the school principal, whether she believes on her knowledge of the facts at her disposal that Section 38A has actually been contravened.
Minister Schaefer.
Seems the Honourable Dugmore doesn't quite understand discussing the merits of a matter that's under consideration by the Department of Labour Relations. I can't indicate the time frame. All I've been told is that the report is with Labour Relations, that they require some additional information, and that they hope to get that information as soon as possible. I can't give exact time frames. They will then have to take a decision as to what, if any, charges are laid. Thank you.
We move to question number 9. Honourable Dennis Joseph to Minister Meyer. I see Minister Meyer.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker, and thank you to the Chairperson of this Finance Standing Committee, Dennis Joseph. The employer and the unions are still busy with the salary negotiations, and I am very concerned about the developments in this particular regard. Now, during the negotiations process about the wage negotiations, Minister Faith Mutambi was replaced by President Ramaphosa, and a new minister was appointed in DPSA. For your sake, Honourable Member, one of the great challenges of the new minister of DPSA was to fire the 35 people Faith Mutambi appointed in her own office against the ministerial handbook. The minister had to deal with 35 people in her own office, so it gives you an indication of what is happening in the ANC. These challenges have slightly been delayed. Honourable Deputy Speaker.
Order.
The Minister Anda Ntlotla is now the new Minister of DPSA, and she also made some changes to the negotiating team and staff in her department. These changes have slightly delayed the processes, but the Executive Consultative Committee has met yesterday to consider proposals, and I will soon brief the Cabinet in the Western Cape about the latest developments in that regard. The Western Cape government has noted that the government has only made 110 billion rand available in the main budget for the salary increases, given the current fiscal situation and the low growth. The Western Cape government is of the view that any increase above the current fiscal envelope is not sustainable, is not affordable, and it is not credible. The Western Cape government is seriously concerned about the impact of the wage bill on service delivery. The Western Cape government cannot afford any wage increases other than what is already budgeted for in the main budget. Any increases above inflation will have a severe impact on our ability to deliver services to our citizens. It is clear from the engagements with my cabinet colleagues during the PSG MTech engagements and the various cabinet meetings that there is no room in their budget for further budget cuts. The National Minister of Finance has also confirmed that the National Treasury will not be able to absorb the huge wage demands by the unions. The employer is currently exploring affordable options to deal with the wage demands. We have agreed in this House, honourable members, that the wage bill in South Africa is a heavy burden on the taxpayers in South Africa. South Africa is currently in a low-growth trap, and any conversation about salary increases must take into consideration the principles of affordability, sustainability, and credibility. Despite the poor performances of national public entities, Honourable Deputy Speaker, we are seeing huge salary increases in bodies like the SABC, Eskom, and many other entities. I have raised this matter to be also taken into consideration during the national negotiations. Currently, in the absence of a final wage agreement, the Western Cape is able to meet its current obligations. If the costs of the wage agreement are in excess of what is set aside in the national budget and no funding is forthcoming from the National Treasury, we would be in a very difficult situation. The government will continue to execute its core mandate despite these challenges. We are pleased that the national government has agreed to look at some of the Western Cape fiscal consolidation strategies to also apply it nationally, and they have made this commitment yesterday. Honourable Deputy Speaker, the national government, Honourable Deputy Speaker, the national government and I agree that we need to manage the wage bill. In the 2018, the reason why I speak about the national government is because this part of the House will soon be there, so we are engaging there, facilitating their exit. In the 2018,
Order.
Deputy Speaker.
You may proceed.
Okay. In the 2018 budget review, Honourable Deputy Speaker, in this document, the government acknowledged that the OECD, who has confirmed that the South African wage bill is the highest amongst its developing peers. In fact, the current wage bill is in excess of 500 billion rand. The developing peers at the level of South Africa's economic development, their wage bill, Honourable Chief Whip, is 300 billion, and we are in excess of 500 billion already. So we are confirming that this wage bill and the demands in the current situation is unaffordable. We have also seen, Honourable Deputy Speaker, in the 2017 MTBBS, that compensation has over the past decade crowded out other important spending. I thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker.
Honourable Joseph.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I would like to thank you, Minister. I just would like to ask the Minister if the President is part of the wage negotiations, because the President goes on TV, he speaks on TV, it's still the same corrupt ANC with a new President. Same corrupt ANC with a new President. So I'm asking if the President is part of the wage negotiations because he's making all promises to workers. Thank you.
Honourable Deputy Speaker, we have seen that there was a crisis in Northwest when the President was overseas negotiating.
Order.
It is very relevant.
Order. The Chair cannot predict or prescribe to the Minister which way he should reply to. Minister, but respond to it. You're welcome to proceed.
Honourable Deputy Speaker, when the President was in Europe trying to convince investors to invest in the economy, but when they ask him, what about expropriation of property without compensation, to sluk hy 'n paar bubbles. Then he escaped and came all the way to try to deal with the situation in Northwest. But I'm afraid to say, in Northwest, toe sluk hy nog weer bubbles. So the President, Honourable Member Joseph, has absolutely no capacity to comprehend what the head of his budget office has indicated in this particular document. And so I am deeply disappointed that the President has no capacity, Honourable Member Joseph, to fully comprehend that this wage bill and the expropriation of property, there are two things that will destroy this economy. It's the wage bill and Section 25 of the Constitution if they amend it. The President has no understanding of what's happening.
Order. We move on to the next question. Order. 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 We move to the next question, which is question 10. Honourable Lekker to Minister Plater. Minister Plater.
Honourable Speaker, I'm going to answer this question. The Honourable Member is not present, but I have conducted a walkabout with the community leaders in Marikana on the 24th of March this year to get the youth and upcommand the youth in that area to further their studies and to present to them opportunities that the department have available for them. And as a result of the success of that walkabout, the department also plans, and that's on my schedule, to host a youth outreach event in Marikana on the 4th of June as part of his Youth Month activity where similar opportunities will be presented to them. The department funded the Elita Lavangeli Christian Church in Marikana through its Youth Safety and Religious Partnership Program during the 2017, this financial year, 2017-18, at the December-January school holidays program. The organizations receive funding in excess of 15,000 rand and reach out to about 300 youngsters. The department has also conducted a policing needs and priorities project in the 2016-17, 18 financial year for the Nyanga cluster, which includes the Philippi and Marikana areas. The department placed 8 chrysalis graduates from Marikana, from the area, in Philippi, in April, beginning of April, to assist with the promotion of safety in the area. And in addition to all of that, Honourable Speaker, I will be in Marikana this coming Saturday for a further program with the Marikana religious and youth leadership. Thank you.
We move on to the next question, which is question 11. Honourable Makaleni to again Minister Plater. Minister Plater.
Sorry for that, Honourable Speaker. That's across the floor skinnering that was happening here.
I spotted that.
You spotted that. Okay. Yeah, not for your ears. Diversion programs, Honourable Speaker, are predominantly done by the Department of Social Development. The Department of Community Safety, however, aims to help create safer environments through targeted interventions and strategic partnerships across the province, and we complement what the Department of Social Development are doing. We're working closely together. This is done in order to assist communities and specifically the youth in communities in creating resilience against the skirts of gangs and drugs. And these include the Chrysalis Youth Academy, which train young men and women from our vulnerable communities in order to steer them away from drugs and gangsterism. and the never-ending referral to rural areas. Many of these youngsters, Honourable Speaker, is coming from our rural areas. And many a times, we even assist them to get into Cape Town due to a lack of resources on their part, such as funding, for them not to come to Cape Town. For the 2017-18 financial year, the Academy trained 540 youth and received funding of just over 12 million rand from the Department of Community as a whole. That is their annual budget. Since 2012, the department has also provided all youth who graduate from Chrysalis with a work placement opportunity for a period of 12 months, during which these students are paid a daily EPWP stipend by the department. The youth work placements are administered by the department in partnership with SAPS, municipalities, city improvement districts, other government departments, and so forth. All students are tracked for a period of 5 years after completion of their training, and we have established that more than 70% of them have been able to find full-time employment, which is critical to breaking free from the cycle of poverty, gangs, and drugs. The department has also committed 1.5 million rand in this financial year to develop a provincial response to the national anti-gangsterism strategy adopted by national government. This response is coordinated by the Prof Joint's Anti-Gangsterism Committee, which is chaired by the head of the Department of Community Safety. These funds will be used to pilot and develop a coordinated plan of action between all the role players that may have an impact on improving the lives of our youngsters at risk of joining gangs and using drugs. The project is in infancy stages, as it was started at the beginning of the financial year. At this stage, the project is comprehensively assessing the feeders that may lead the youth to joining gangs, and this is a very important point. And this information will be used to inform a coordinated plan of action to radically reduce the impact of gangs on communities. The recent upsurge in gang violence in Avian Park, Worcester Police Precinct has brought the department to address the situation. Community safety workshops are currently being held in areas associated with ongoing violence due to gangsterism and drugs, and about 15 such areas, Honourable Speaker, have been identified. The first of which was held in Avian Park in Worcester already, and was well attended. Ongoing youth outreaches with a specific focus on our partnership with FET colleges has seen us reaching thousands of youth, with many benefiting from existing tertiary education bursaries to study towards a better life through education opportunities. And this is becoming one of the department's other flagship programs and projects. The department has furthermore developed a strong relationship with the religious fraternity in most of the gangster areas, and that will continue now with the upcoming June-July holiday period and December-January holiday period. A budget of 5 million rand, just over 5 million rand, have been allocated for the program. And during this time, the children and the youngsters are in the organized care of the religious fraternity in programs, developmental programs, religious programs, and also social and other programs. We also embark, and I've mentioned this before, on entities, partners such as Nyanga Yetu, Amantla Edu Football, and earlier with other questions, I mentioned it already, so I'm not going to give a lengthy outlay of what we're doing there. I also referred to our walking bus project, and I just mentioned it, but not giving any other further information. I've done so already. Thank you, Honourable Speaker.
Thank you. Honourable Makaleni.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. My question will be to the Minister. Of the 540, how many are from Hout Bay and Imizamoyeto to be particular? And how often has he measured the impact of the 540 to the total population of young people in the province?
Minister.
I have to admit to the Honourable Member, I do not have a specific breakdown per area. that information I can provide for the honourable member. But looking at the overall success with regard to permanent job placement, I think a rating of about 70%, Honourable Speaker, for me, it's a very good rating. Thank you.
Thank you. Honourable Gillian.
Thank you, Speaker. MEC, you've raised the issue that the work placement is for 12 months. Can you maybe tell us what happened after the 12 months has expired of the chrysalis students?
Honourable Speaker, thank you to the honourable member for the question. During the 12-month period, they're working at specific places. We place them at state departments, at police stations, and so forth, city improvement districts. Many of them do get those that excel, those that want to work, that want to develop themselves, they get permanent placement. And we are very happy with that. We even find that many of these state departments ask us for more of these youngsters to work there as interns for the specific work they provide. And then also we have the agreement with the FET colleges, those that want to further their studies at the respective FET colleges. We actually encourage most of the youngsters, many of them, to rather not to go and work immediately, but to further their studies, get a tertiary education so that they at least have a paper in their hand, so that they know exactly they are covered for their future years. So, and the work, the monitoring for a period of 5 years, many of them need the added support in their lives, and that is why we have tutors at Chrysalis Academy that is following up on them, what they are doing, because we want the youngsters to make a success of their future. And there's welfare workers and other people that is well trained to fulfill that specific function. Thank you.
Honourable Gillian, another opportunity. You may proceed.
Thank you, Speaker. MEC, you've mentioned a program for 5 million for, did you say December? And you also mentioned that you are working with a religious fraternity. Can you maybe outline us more on this religious fraternity that you're working with?
We specifically target, Honourable Speaker, the youth in the vulnerable areas, the vulnerable communities, the gangster communities, and so forth, poverty-stricken communities. We draw in, we have partners such as the Neighbourhood Watchers, the community policing forums, and SAPs. We work with them and we decide, community to community, which of the religious entities also working with the youngsters that can further assist them. It's not to say, if you place youngsters with a specific fraternity, they are the best suited to deal and to work with those youngsters. That is why we're asking our partners to come and sit on a panel, to identify, to bring names to us, and to say this entity, that entity is best suited, etc. And they have, you must also remember, Honourable Member, many of the religious fraternities without funding in the past are doing excellent work in many communities. They know what they are doing, they went through the rough, understand the plight of the youngsters. So we want to encourage those entities to come forward so that we can further assist them. And if you in your community do have such an entity, we would love to hear about them so that they can become part of the safety fraternity and the safety family, so that they can do exactly that, and that is to work with the youngsters, to occupy them, to keep them busy. I think for me that is a worthy project and a worthy program. Thank you.
We then move on to the next question. Sorry, Honourable Kividu, the last opportunity.
Baie dankie, agbare Speaker. Ek wil net aan die agbare Plato vra, gegee dan die vergelijking tussen Provincial en ons vlaggenschap, so ek noem die Northland College. Provincial zijnde dan in termen van modaliteit, in termen van opleiding, bepaalde specialisrichtings, waar sekere voorvereistes noodwendig is vir inskrywing en ook vir registrasie en akkreditasie, en nou aan die ander kant Northlink wat konvensionele onderwys aanbied. Daar's 'n basiese verskil. En dan wil ek verder weet, elke gangster wat op 'n diversieprogram is opleibaar. Ek dink dit is die eerste belangrike punt. Ek wou net weet van u in watter opsig is dit moontlik dat by hierdie colleges 'n aparte entiteit geskep kan word dat hierdie diversiegevalle ingeskakel word direk by die college, aangesien dit volwassene onderrig is en dat die proses kan voortgaan.
Orde, dit was 'n lang vraag. Ek het die agbare kans georde. Die agbare se sin het nie 'n punt op die einde gehad nie. Dis waarom ek vir hom kans gegee het om die sin klaar te maak, want dit was 'n lang sin. In general, we can have an introduction to the question, but not a long statement. Minister, you may proceed.
Agbare speaker, mag ek maar lang antwoord gee? Now, a very short answer. The criteria for the FET colleges, age 18 to 35. For Chrysalis Academy, age 18 to 25. The issue we're grappling with, and we're debating currently with Chrysalis and also with FET colleges, and that is what's hampering, wat die jong mense weghou en weerhou, vir al die jong mense wat een keer in conflict with the law was. En dit is iets wat ons hierdie pad het moet kry. Minor crimes, etc., that negativity is against their name. Then the entities don't want to give them a chance. So what we're actually doing, we're actually saying to that youngster, go and do the wrongs in your society and your community. And that is where we, as the politicians and the learned people, also need to change and transform our own mindsets as well. Otherwise, we're going to lose many of those youngsters. But that's the further discussion we must have with one another. Baie dankie, voorsitter.
Thank you. The next question will stand over. We move on. We move on to question number 13. Honourable Conlu to Minister Dr. Meyer. Dr. Meyer.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker, and thank you to the Honourable Member for the question. The Moody's rating agency has recently finalized its review on the 29th of March 2018, since it had placed the sovereign rating together with that of the city on review during November 2017. Honourable Deputy Speaker, the credit profile of the City of Cape Town reflects the city's strong financial performance, supported by a large and diversified economic base and predictable sources of revenue from property rates, taxes, and electricity. The city has also consistently generated operating surpluses, strong liquidity relative to the rated peers, low debt, although we've expected this to rise significantly over the next 3 years. Honourable Deputy Speaker, the Moody's Investor Service, also in terms of their report, indicated the following strengths. There's a favourable financial operations characterised by annual operating surpluses, strong financial and debt management, low debt, though it is set to increase, large and diversified economy. Honourable Deputy Speaker, they've also identified the credit challenges, mainly relating to the water crisis. Honourable Deputy Speaker, it is also important to note that other matters, because the question also has to do with other matters relating to this, the Moody's Investor Service has also specifically referred in their report to a strong cash flows that enable the cities to finance its capital infrastructure without taking over new debt. The administration also regularly monitors its budget execution and cash flows and its commitment to reinforcing internal controls. Cape Town is the second largest city in South Africa in terms of the budget size after Johannesburg. They also indicated that the city did not issue any new debt in the fiscal year 2017, and as a result of this, Honourable Deputy Speaker, its net debt declined to 11% of operating revenue from 14% in the previous financial year. There is, however, a matter that the rating agencies did point out, and that refers to the increase in capital expenditure because of the water crisis. I thank you.
Thank you. I sense there are no follow-up questions. The times for question has expired already. And the remaining replies will be printed in Hansard. We then move on to the next order on the order paper, which is the questions to the Premier without notice. First question by the Honourable Beerwinkel. I see the Honourable Beerwinkel.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Premier, when you started here as the Premier and as the leader, you appointed an all-male, predominantly white cabinet. Then you, at National, appointed Lindiwe Masipuko, who also showed her individuality. She was also shoved aside. Then came Dr. Mampela, another independent thinker. She was shoved aside. Patricia Meyer-Delou, first removed here and posted to the city. Now she's the latest strong woman on the verge of being ousted. My question to you, Premier, do you feel threatened by strong, independent, free-thinking women in your party leadership structures?
Order. Premier, order.
No.
Order. Honourable Beerwinkel, you may continue.
I didn't expect anything different, Deputy Speaker. Premier, Mayor Patricia de Lille has at some stage claimed that during your tenure as leader, all members were treated fairly when it came to disciplinary issues, which is a feather in your cap. Why then now, as another woman leader, are you not stepping up to the plate to defend her in her fight against the City of Cape Town and the leaders of the DA's FedEx?
Honourable Janki, please.
Firstly, the issue is an issue between the Democratic Alliance and the Mayor of Cape Town, and I have no position at all in the Democratic Alliance or the City of Cape Town. So the second point is that I believe in the rule of law and due process, and that is unfolding currently, and I have no locus standi in the issue.
Honourable Beerwinkel, are you finished? Then we move on to the next one. Honourable Davids.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Honourable Premier, could the Honourable Premier indicate whether she is a racist in hiding, as claimed after her latest Twitter fit? Could the Honourable Premier indicate whether she is a racist in hiding, as is claimed after her latest Twitter fit?
Order. Order.
This is an embarrassment of a question. The answer is obviously not. I am fundamentally non-racist and don't believe in judging people by the colour of their skin or any other immutable factor about a person. I believe in judging a person by the content of their character, not the colour of their skin.
Honourable David.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Then, Honourable Premier, how can we take you serious when you continue to sing, or seriously when you continue to sing praises to the legacy of colonialism?
I don't sing praises at all, and this is a fundamental distortion and political posturing. If we are sitting in this legislature, following the rules we follow, because we believe that accountability and separation of powers and multi-party democracy is a better way of government than most others that is entrenched in our constitution, where does the Honourable David think that that method of government comes from?
Honourable David, your last opportunity.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Could the Honourable Premier tell us why she continues the little Twitter with her unwelcome comments on colonialism after her leaders have distanced themselves from her with the first Twitter?
What I fundamentally believe is that Twitter can be a wonderful and open platform for debate and discussion. There is no abuse involved at all, but it is a question of adults addressing adults. And when people want to manipulate and abuse what one has said, that is their right and freedom, but it's not my problem.
We move on to the next one, Honourable Maseko.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. Premier, in light of the protest in Sikalo, have you visited the community and what are the reasons for the protests?
Order, order. Order. Order, Honourable Diana. We couldn't hear the member properly. Just repeat your question.
Deputy Speaker, there's only Premier in this House. Premier, in light of the protests that are going on in the city of Cape Town, specifically in Sikalo, have you visited the community and what are the reasons for the protests?
I was in Sikalo this morning, following on from Minister Bonginkosi Madikizela, Minister Plato, and Minister Fritz, who spent most of yesterday there. And they informed me on an ongoing basis of what was going on. I went out this morning to assess the situation for myself, and fortunately, the situation has calmed down now. This is a case that is becoming more and more frequent. It involves a privately owned piece of land called Sikalo, which has previously illegally been used for sand mining. And it was dug pretty hollow, and the owner of that land then offered it to the City of Cape Town. And the City of Cape Town assessed the land to see whether it was potentially usable for housing. And they decided that because of the extent of the sand mining and the level of the water table, as I understand it, and various other factors, that it was not suitable for human settlement development. So then they turned down the request from the landowner to purchase the land. After that, or at around the same time, I don't exactly know what the sequence, the time sequence of the events were, but the owner of the land allegedly facilitated a land invasion to strengthen his arm when it came to trying to enforce the city to purchase his land. The price that he put on that land was 30 million rand. Now, that is land that he couldn't sell on the open market, so it had no value at all on the open market. He had made many millions out of sand mining it illegally, and then he felt that he could potentially strong-arm a provincial government to pay 30 million rand for a piece of land that doesn't have another taker on the market. And of course, as you know, the market price for land is only what someone is prepared to pay for it.
Honourable Janchi, please.
This is an adult discussion.
Premier, you may continue once it's quieted down.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. So, the city said that they could not purchase that land, especially given the fact that they were almost being strong-armed into doing so, because at that point the legal advice of the city was that they could not provide services on privately owned land. And the people began to demand services, so the landowner was in a position where he could support the people demanding services. So if the city provided the services, he could basically say they recognized the settlement and therefore they had to buy the land. So this is, Deputy Speaker, I have a breakfast with the mayor on a regular basis. And so to try and turn this into an issue between the mayor and myself is a complete red herring and is being driven for party political purposes. The mayor and I have positions in spheres of government, and we continue to work together professionally, doing the job we are mandated to do by the Constitution. And you are welcome to ask the mayor, and you are welcome to ask anybody else. We continue working professionally together and seeing each other regularly in the course of our work.
Order.
So, given the fact that the city still does not believe that they should purchase that land at this stage, Minister Bonginkosi Madikizela set out a longer-term plan for the people of Siqalo. But you will understand, Mr. Deputy Mayor, that especially when people have been waiting, Deputy Speaker, when people have been waiting on housing waiting lists for a very long time, it is extremely flammable when any local authority allows people who've invaded land illegally to jump the housing queue. And it is that conundrum that we are working through at the moment. Thank you.
Honourable Maseko.
Thank you very much, Premier. Premier, do the police at present have things under control in the area, and does the decision by Minister Cele to backtrack the decision by former Minister Mbalula of making use of the Defence Force impact on their ability to manage the violence in Cape Town?
Order. Order. Please come to order. Honourable Gaka, I'm also talking to you. Order. And Honourable Mseki, you've had your turn. Now it's the Premier's turn. Premier may continue.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. My judgment is that the police have the situation in Siqalo under control at present. That was certainly my judgment. General Manley was there, and various other people were there. There was a tragedy last night of 2 people being shot. Formally, they were not killed, they were injured, and they are in hospital, and it is a tragedy.
Somebody killed there. You don't know that.
Honourable Janki, please, you're becoming an irritation now.
I certainly know that a person was killed by a taxi that was speeding through the crowd, but I'm answering a question about the police at the moment, and the police action has not resulted in the death of anybody, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Now, the problem was that when the people were having a standoff across Jakes Harville Drive, as usually happens, people come from the back and start throwing stones over the crowd and into the police, and then run away. And when the police feel that the stones are coming onto the road and being thrown, they take action. And it is very unfortunate in these situations that it is often inevitable that innocent people get caught in the crossfire. So a lot of thugs use these highly volatile situations also to get involved and to throw stones and do that kind of thing. When it comes to the South African National Defence Force, I would not call them for a case such as the one that is there in Sitkalo, because the civilian authority is still clearly in control of the situation. Where the civil authority is completely out of control is where the gangs and the drug lords have effectively set up a parallel authority and control who may deliver what services and control who may enter and leave an area and actually curtail people's freedoms and rights. And so they have set up what amounts in many cases to a parallel state. And that is a fundamental threat to a democratic order. And that is why I believe it's absolutely appropriate to call in the SANDF. The previous Minister Mbalula agreed to that, but never followed through on that commitment. And we were very relieved when he agreed to that. Now I'm answering another question now, and if you would listen to the two parts of the question, you will understand why I'm answering them in two parts. So, Deputy Speaker, we will still pursue very strongly the need for the SANDF to come in and deal with the extent of the hold of criminal gangs, which also tragically involves the corruption of some police members in certain areas. But we do not believe that for the kind of conflict that we saw yesterday, the SANDF is the right option.
Honourable Maseki, your last opportunity.
Thank you very much. Premier, what happened in the meeting when an ANC representative joined in this morning?
Look, the ANC is trying to politicize this. What?
Order.
It's very...
Order, Honourable Davids. The Premier's on the floor now.
It's very interesting that the Honourable Davids wasn't even there, and she's now telling me what people said. The bottom line is that if she was watching me on TV, she would have heard me say that we are not coming with any promises. We are coming with proposals. And the proposals have to be discussed, worked out, and implemented. And I emphasized that no one is
Honourable
coming
Davids, please.
with promises. The only thing that's empty is your head, Honourable Davids.
Order. 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 Premier, I think that is not parliamentary. I would ask you to withdraw that. Order. Order. My assessment of that remark is that it is not parliamentary to refer to a member as in the way that you did. It's, so I ask the Premier to please order, Mr. Mayor. I'm still busy. The Premier can withdraw that and then we can continue.
The Honourable David's head is not full.
Premier, you're making it difficult for the chair to... It reminds me... Order. That reminds me of the well-known Langenhoven strategy, but I think that was also unparliamentary at the time to put it in that fashion. So, Premier, I would ask you to please withdraw and continue.
Honourable Speaker, if the interjections reflected any form of perception, intelligence, or even wit, it would be in the spirit of this House. But to help you, Honourable Deputy Speaker, I will withdraw.
Thank you, Premier. We still have time left. You finished with your question, your reply?
Oh yes. So they were talking about the ANC grandstanding there. Of course, Faiz Jacobs was there, and and various other people had been there, and they called their own meeting, and then they came and jumped up and down and tried to hijack a meeting and politicize a meeting that was between government officials and various community representatives. That's fine. The upshot of the meeting was that the community saw right through them, and booed them and rejected them in the context.
Order. Thank you. The last opportunity is to the Honourable Order. Honourable Botha.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Order, Honourable Botha, not Honourable Davids. Honourable Botha, you may proceed.
Since the DA came into power in 2009 and under your leadership as Premier, what are some of the biggest successes that this DA-led government has achieved?
Order. Premier, you may proceed. Order. Order. I want the Premier to start with a reply. Order.
I think more and more, people have come to understand that a capable state and the rule of law are the foundation for a country's success. And what we have done is establish a capable, competent government operating according to the rule of law. And that is absolutely fundamental.
Order.
We can.
Order. Honourable Davids and Honourable Fritz, please allow the Premier to continue.
There's a WhatsApp that has landed on my timeline, which basically calls upon communities across the Western Cape to rise up in protest. And it is clearly driven by, the pre-election agenda. And we always know what the ANC gets up to in the run-up to an election, and this is what we're seeing now. But all you have to do to showcase what we have achieved here in every single field of government, you just have to compare any ANC province with the Western Cape. Let's just take a look at the Northwest Province. The health system has effectively collapsed. The place is bled dry with corruption. And things don't
Davids, sorry, Premier,
function.
just one second. Honourable Davids, I'm giving you now a last warning. You're giving a running commentary all the time. You can't carry on like this. Premier, you may continue.
So, I would just like to refer the Honourable Member to all of the national assessments on every single level and go and look at the wall of awards that have been awarded to this provincial government to see what our successes have been. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Honourable Botha, is there a follow-up? Order. 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 Time has expired, but when you're busy with one question, you proceed to finish the question. So, Honourable Botha, you may proceed.
Premier, you've had to deal with various challenges when you became Premier in 2009, especially fixing some of the damages left by the ANC-led government then. What were some of these challenges, especially to ensure that the Western Cape became known as an effective, clean government?
Important thing is that one of the important things is that there wasn't a single clean audit in this province when we came into office.
Order.
We had to deal with legacies such as the brown envelope scandal. We had to deal with the complete abuse of the Erasmus Commission. We had to deal with the incomprehensible expenditure through the Department of Transport and Public Works. We had to deal with the regressing matric pass rate at every level. We had to deal with the internal contestations and the deployed cadres in various positions throughout government. It was so difficult that it took us one term of office to establish the foundation of competent governance.
Thank you. Honourable Botha, your last opportunity.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Premier, how do the number of protests in your second term and the degree of violence of these protests compare to your first term as Premier?
You always know whether an election is coming up or not by what the ANC does on the ground. And it's never anything constructive. It's always trying to disrupt service delivery and only trying to make life difficult, as we saw again today in Mitchell's Plain.
Order. Thank you. That brings us to the end of questions to the Premier. We move on to statements by members. I first see the DA, Honourable Botha.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. According to Section 42(3) of our Constitution, the National Council of Provinces, and I quote, represents the provinces to ensure that provincial interests are taken into account in the national sphere of government, close quote. Members of the NCOP are not elected by the voters, but are appointed by provincial legislatures to represent the province's interests. It should be noted that the NCOP, unlike the National Assembly, has very limited oversight powers. The NCOP does have an oversight role over the way that the National Executive exercises its authority insofar as it affects provincial interests, but provincial executives are not accountable to the NCOP. Therefore, the intrusion of the chairperson of the NCOP Select Committee on Petitions and Executive Undertakings into the Kailicha Hospital unannounced and uninvited was beyond his powers. What compounds this abuse was that the chairman appears to have included an ANC councillor in his delegation while failing to inform all the members of his committee of the visit. This was an invasion by politicians with no authority into a hospital where they verbally attacked staff, thereby putting patients' lives at risk. This behaviour is reprehensible and demands disciplinary action against member Demasani Kimbi and the education of ANC members of the NCOP as to their role in terms of the Constitution. I therefore am pleased that our DA representative at the NCOP lodged a complaint for this matter to be further investigated, as we cannot have politicians acting in such an irresponsible manner and whose aim is to score cheap political points. I thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Order. I see the ANC. Honourable Mugaka.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. The childish, infantile, stupid statements of DA leader Mmusi Maimane knows no limit. It is because he is not a man of his own, but a puppet on the lap of the DA's backroom boys club. Maimane just mimics other people as he has no political stature, no credibility or political traction of his own. Just hear what his own DA people say of him. They say he has no backbone. He is a dishonest pastor and an attention seeker. Mmusi Maimane is called a Chester missing puppet controlled by his racist bus-cap handlers and just his madam's microphone. This is what the DA really thinks of him.
Order.
He can't even get a grip.
Order. Member, just 1 second. Honourable Chief Whip.
It was objectionable up until the point he then used the word madam. He must explain who he means by madam, please, Deputy Speaker.
Order. I will look at the Hansard. I won't make a ruling now, but please continue.
This is what the DA really thinks of him. He can't even get a grip on his predecessor's regular passive Twitter feeds. In fact, he told the Honorable Premier Ellen Zil to stop her obsession but does nothing as she openly defies him. The ANC was right all along about my money. He is just a loud microphone used by those protecting the past privilege of certain people. He projects himself as a fake American president, Barack Obama, and lately as a dummy of the glorious father of our revolution and the nation, Comrade Nelson Mandela. But guess what? Guess what? He is not even a shadow of those great men. He is just a mini Honorable Zille.
Order. Order. Can I just say before we proceed to the next one, that was a personal attack on a member on the other side. So those members do not have protection here. If that was levelled against a member of this House, that would have been unparliamentary all the way. Member Mackenzie, you may proceed.
Thank you, Speaker. Education is one of the Western Cape government's key priorities. The department consistently produces the best quality education in South Africa, with the highest bachelor pass rate and record-breaking pass rates in maths and science. The department made significant interventions to assist schools in Mitchell's Plain to improve their pass rates from 2016 to 2017.
Order. Just 1 second, Member Mackenzie.
Yeah.
There's too much noise coming from the ANC backbench there. And I'm particularly referring to the two ladies sitting in the back there, Honourable Diana and Honourable Makaleni. Allow the member the freedom to speak.
Thank you. The department makes significant interventions to assist schools in Mitchell's Plain to improve their pass rates from 2016 to 2017 and currently has programs for 2018 under the way. As part of the department's interventions, the department registered to offer a third language, isiXhosa, as an 8th subject to learners struggling with Afrikaans. The department arranged subject advisors and conducted a large push sessions just prior to the final examination in all higher subjects. Added to this, the Education District introducing tutor sessions for grade 11s and 12s were held on Saturdays to optimize learning and identify learners at risk of failing so that they could be assisted with additional support. The 232 progress learners of Mitchell's Plain schools also received intensive support at the Kaya Center in the form of Saturday classes, seasonal camps at the Cape Academy for Maths and Science, and through the homework hubs. To ensure optimum performance of all these programs, the district hosts quarterly meetings to assess and measure the impact of interventions as well as monitor quarterly performance. These interventions have culminated in improved performance and quality standards of our education system. Under the leadership of Minister Debbie Schaefer, the department has prioritized school in formerly disadvantaged areas by expanding life-changing opportunities to children across the province, particularly in Mitchell's Plain. Mitchell's Plain schools bear the testament to the game-changing efforts of the Western Cape Education Department. I thank you.
Thank you. In the absence of the EFF, I see the DA again. Honourable Maseko.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, former President Nelson Mandela famously said, and I quote, "We must work for the day when we..."
Order.
Deputy Speaker.
Order. Honourable Magaka, Honourable Gillian.
Okay. Deputy Speaker, former South African President Nelson Mandela famously said, and I quote, "We must work for the day when we, as South Africans, see one another and interact with one another as equal human beings and as part of one nation united, rather than torn asunder by its diversity." This is also emphasized by our Constitution.
Order. We cannot continue in this way. There's too much comment coming from across the side. Honourable Chacham, while I'm speaking, you're interjecting again. Allow the member the freedom to make a statement. She has a right to make it. You may continue, member.
Deputy Speaker, the people of this province are indisputably diverse, beautiful in their culture and languages. We must embrace the beauty we possess as a unit. I am talking about whether you are a Khoisan, you are Xhosa speaking, you are Sotho speaking, and even Zulu speaking. That is South Africa as a rainbow nation. How can we enjoy the great diversity of our province and our country when our residents live in fear of one another? That is not what freedom stands for. For a long time, South Africa has been seen as a beacon of hope in the world. This status has been earned since the adoption of a constitution that respects and acknowledges the human rights of each and every individual living in this land. I call on residents, including the opposition of this province, to celebrate our diversity.
Leads to a collapse of service delivery and good governance.
Order.
The most recent case is the Hawks Soup onto George municipality for fraud and corruption. Shame on the DA for allowing it, as various SIU and other forensic evidence has shown for a long time that municipalities run like a DA spaza shop. The DA does not want to kick out George Mayor Melvin Naik or Municipal Manager Trevor Botha. It takes a poor Yako Lond leading an REC to release a statement that we are resolving as an REC of this region that Melvin Naik and Trevor Botha must be suspended, because the DA Federal Council cannot do anything. It embraces that corruption. Just see how the DA allowed Cape Town to go downhill in a feverish pursuit of booting Mayor Patricia de Lille. The DA destabilized Langsbeck and Beaufort West, as well as Ghanaland, and what disarray the DA brought to Bito. That's their factional stuff. Further to that, the DA now also wants to get rid of its highly praised Matsikama Mayor Renda Stephen and Stellenbosch Speaker Donovan Hubert. That is what the DA does. It first puts you.
Order.
Okay.
Order. Order.
The MEC crazy here.
Order, Honourable Janki. Your time is running out. Are you done? Please continue. You've got a couple of seconds left. Order. Order. I want to afford the same opportunity to Member Janki to have his speech in
It first
silence.
puts people on a pedestal and then throw them away like used tissues. Look what the DA did to Lindiwe Mazebuko, to Mampele, and it's about to do that to Delil now.
Order. 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 Your time has expired. Order, members. Order. I want us to continue in a different vein, not with this shouting all across the passage. The next is the DA, Honourable Simmers.
Ek kan maar niks sê nie, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, when it comes to waste and waste management, what is needed is policies that support a more proactive approach to recycling, rehabilitation and minimizing of waste. Deputy Speaker, one of the many actual solutions to massive landfills and other forms of waste is sustainable recycling. Ongelukkig tot die nadeel van alle Suid-Afrikaners is die benadering van die ANC nasionale regering tot herwinning nie deeglik deurdink nie en ook uitsluitlik. Die gebrek aan aansporingsmeganismes en inisiatiewe lei daartoe dat die huidige herwinningsprogramme faal om broodnodige werksgeleenthede te skep. Deputy Speaker, the national government's 14-year-old plastic bag levy has dismally failed. Mountains of plastic bags still end up in our landfills, oceans, rivers and lakes with dire ecological and infrastructure consequences that will last decades. As die regerende partye in die Weskaap glo ons dat slegs 100% herwinbare plastieksakke toegelaat moet word en dat hierdie sakke bioafbreekbaar onder toepaslike aerobiese of anaerobiese toestande moet wees. Deputy Speaker, under a DA-led national government, we will change the way that the National Department is administering waste and the current plastic bag levy. We will give waste sufficient value, which will create and aid an ever-growing recycling culture, which will limit the volumes of waste coming to regional landfills and create much-needed jobs. Deputy Speaker, we will incentivize waste reduction initiatives so that the private sector will become involved. And if the private sector steps in and gains from waste management, it will create jobs and opportunities to further jobs along the line. In this way, we will create a resilient, inclusive environment for everyone to share in. Baie dankie.
Dankie, tyd is verstreke. In the absence of the ACDP, I see the ANC. Order. Honourable Diana.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. The ANC condemns the violence and killings in Mitchell's Plain, where the tensions around the Sikalo informal settlement yesterday boiled over. The protest action escalated because the DA does not care for people and their plight. For years now, the DA finds excuses and people to blame for the situation there. But the DA does not deliver equitable services in that poor area and continues to treat those people as second-class citizens. Instead of reaching out to assist those people on both sides of the road with their real problems and complaints, the DA fans raise polarization and instill swart gevaar, black danger, fear. It is reported that 2 people were killed last night, a protester hit by a taxi, and the driver afterwards, and 2 others were wounded in shootings. The finger pointing over the Sikalo land does not assist at all.
Just 1 second, Honourable Fritz.
Factually lies. No, it's factually incorrect.
Thank you, member.
Can you please sit down? Can you please sit down, Minister?
Order.
If you want my respect, you must sit down, Minister.
Member Diana, Honourable Fritz, you've made a point. It's not a point of order, but I'll take the point that you say is factually not correct. The member may continue.
The finger pointing over the Sikalo land does not assist at all. Even this morning, the Honourable Premier Helen Zille rushed to be seen on television, but blamed the private landowner for inflating the price and also spreads a rumor that the owner wants to donate the land to the community. Sikalo residents and the broader Mitchell's Plain communities are not enemies of each other, but rather have common grievances which can be resolved if we work together along the lines of non-racist and non-violence. I thank you.
Order. Please come to order. Please come to order before I see the Honourable Schaefer for the DA. You may proceed.
Speaker, if I'd like to just comment and correct Member Dijon on some of her facts. So Section 17 of the Constitution on the Republic of South Africa states that everyone has the right...
Order. Order, just 1 second. Order, please. I'm talking to the ANC and on Minister Fritz. Allow the member to proceed in silence, please. Member, you may continue.
Everyone has the right, peacefully and unarmed, to assemble, to demonstrate, to picket and to present petitions. This right is limited in terms of Section 36 and 16(2)(b), which states that everyone has a right to the freedom of expression, which does not include incitement or imminent violence. Speaker, the situation in Mitchell's Plain does not, by any stretch of our imagination, represent what was originally envisioned under Section 17 of the Constitution. On the contrary, it is violent and abhorrent abomination of the rights of good residents of Mitchell's Plain. What is clear, Speaker, is that there's an orchestrated move to destabilise Mitchell's Plain and cause unnecessary distress amongst the residents of our province. The perpetrators of the ongoing protests in Mitchell's Plain have erupted chaos, destructing private property and state resources. As a result of the mayhem, many have been forced to take refuge in their homes, depriving them the right of free movement and access to their own town. This is absolutely unacceptable and should not be tolerated. To this end, Deputy Speaker, Law enforcement must take punitive measures against all those who are hell-bent on breaking the law and callously infringing on the rights of our law-abiding citizens in Mitchell's Plain. As Rachel Marsden once said, your rights end where mine begin. I thank you.
Thank you. That brings us to the end of member statements. We move on to notices of motion. Are there any motions where notice is given? Honourable Joseph.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I move that this House debate the increasing unrest, violence and destruction of property being instigated in the Western Cape. I so move.
Notice is taken. Honourable Chacha.
I move that the House debates the continued failure by the Provincial Agriculture Department to play by the book. They continue to refuse to be held accountable of their governance processes, and actually they've continued to fail to come and report and do annual reporting on 2016 and 17. This, Speaker, it's important that we must hold that department and the MEC accountable of the money of the taxpayers.
Order. You're starting to motivate now. This is time for giving a notice of a motion. No motivation is required. I see who next. The Honourable Inanna.
Deputy Speaker, thank you very much. The motion with notice that this House debates the shockingly high rates of femicide and sexual violence prevalent in our society, and preventative, punitive and rehabilitative solutions to address this scourge. Thank you.
Thank you. Notice is taken. Honourable Chacham again.
We move that the House debates the significance of the Philippi horticulture area as well as the development plans by the City of Cape Town and the Provincial Department of Human Settlements.
Notice taken. I see the Honourable Kavido.
Thank you, Speaker.
Sorry, we are busy with notices of motion.
With notice, yes, with
Thank
notice.
you.
Thank you, Speaker. I move that the House debates incidents of blatant racism and hate speech amongst all ethnic groups in South Africa.
Order, please. You may proceed, Honourable Yankee.
Welcome back, Honourable Speaker. That the House institute an urgent investigation into the allegations of fraud and corruption in the procurement process and the awarding of tenders by the George municipality. Yes, I'm bringing it.
Notice taken. Honourable Yankee. Jy het jou bank verloor of is in die regte plek nou? Yeah. You've got to be in your seat. I see the Honourable Chacha.
Move that the House debates the ongoing arbitrary and heartless farm evictions in the DA-led province.
Notice taken. I see the Honourable Gillian.
Speaker, I move with notice that the House debates the failure of the DA-run Western Cape government to address social challenges in this province.
Notice taken. Chacham.
Yes.
The Honourable Chacham.
Yes, Speaker. I move that the House debates the impact of the skills shortage and mismatch in the Western Cape economy and any plans by the government to address this.
Notice taken. I see the Honourable Davids.
Thank you.
Sorry, there's a mic that's on, excuse me. Thank you. You may proceed.
I move that the House debates the increasing incidents of violent service delivery protests in the DA-run province.
Notice taken. Notices of motion. Honourable Yankee.
Notice.
No, I'm busy with notices of motion.
With notice.
Yes, that's right.
That the House debates the failure by municipalities in the DA-run province to optimally spend budgets to improve the lives of the poor.
Notice taken. Okay. No further notices of motion. We now move to motions without notice. Are there any motions without? I see the Honourable Dugmore, I see Honourable Inanna, and I see Honourable Max. For ease of purpose, shall we do 3 at a time? And I will ask the table to guide me. Honourable Dugmore, you may proceed.
So shall I just do my 3?
No, you do 1 at a time.
Okay. I would like to move without notice, Speaker, that this House notes with deep sadness that 7 workers were killed in a crash at Cape Town's notorious Bidskop rail crossing when their bakkie collided with a train, in the exact same spot that claimed 10 lives of school children in 2010, and notes further that the workers died on a public holiday, Freedom Day, on their way to work. And this House therefore conveys sincere condolences to their families and friends and calls on the provincial government to prove what it actually did in the past 8 years to put the promised measures in place to in fact end the carnage at that crossing.
Are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice? There are no objections. The next person was Honourable Hinana, after which Honourable Max.
Thank you, Speaker. Motion without notice that this House notes with great sadness the death of a 21-year-old man who was killed during the protest march at Sikalo settlement in Mitchell's Plain on Wednesday evening. We wish the speedy recovery even of the other 2 who were injured in the same protest by a taxi. Furthermore, that this House condemns the destruction of property and civil disobedience that has taken place while protesting for the service delivery. I so move.
Are there any objections to the motion being moved? No objections. I see the Honourable Max.
That this House notes with great sadness the passing of 3 pioneer South African actors who died in an Eastern Cape car accident. Among the deceased are presenter, actor and producer Akumzi Jazile, actor Tobani Seleni, and singer and actress Siasanga Kobese, who passed away near Queenstown early on Saturday morning. Ambani Kashle, Akumzi, Tobani, Siasanga.
Are there any objections? No objections agreed to. The next round of 3, I see the Honourable Diana, I see Honourable Simmers, and I see Honourable Gillian for this round. I need the table staff to help me, please. You may proceed, Honourable Diana.
Motion without notice. I move that the House notes with concern and condemns the killing of 4-year-old Thea Lewis that was hit by a stray bullet in a gang-related fight in Eitzach while playing in front of her home. Notes further that Thea is one of many children who have lost their lives in this fashion in the province in the past weeks due to the provincial government's inaction to address gang violence, conveys condolences to her family and friends, and calls on the national government to intervene in making the streets of the Western Cape safe for our children.
Are there any objections to the motion being moved? Is there an objection? There is an objection. It will be printed on the order paper. I see the Honourable Simmers.
Thank you, Speaker. I move without notice that the House congratulates the Minister of Local Government, Anton Bredel, for his stern action and resolute courage to stamp out corruption in municipalities in our province. The House further notes the decision to raid George and Bitter municipality by the Hawks is recommendable and is a step in the right direction. I so move.
Are there any objections? There are objections. It will be printed on the order paper. Daar is beswaar, lede. Let's proceed. Honourable Gillian, it is... Okay, so, members, can we get some order, please? Order, please. You may proceed, Honourable Gillian.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, I move without notice that this House notes with sadness the passing on of 7-week-old baby Malia Messiah last week after parents were allegedly turned away at the Nova Park Community Health Center, conveys condolences to her parents and calls on the Health Department to investigate the death and report to this House on the outcome. I thank you.
Are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice? There are no objections.
Dennis?
I see the Honourable Hinana, I see Honourable Magaka, and I see the Honourable Dianki.
Thank you, Speaker. Motion without notice that the House applauds and accepts the sentencing today of Sandile Manzo to the effective 32 years imprisonment for the murder of his girlfriend, Karabo Mukwena. May her soul now rest in peace. I so move.
Are there any objections? There are no objections. Sorry, Honourable Magaka, I just need to understand. Member Diana, there are no objections. Okay, thank you. Honourable Magaka.
Thank you, Speaker. I move without notice that the House notes and congratulates Omar Badsha, who was recently bestowed with the National Order of Ikamanga in silver for his commitment to the preservation of our country's history through groundbreaking and a well-balanced research and collection of profiles and events of the struggle for liberation, and applauds him for making the Western Cape proud. I thank you.
Are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice? No objections. I see the Honourable Dianki.
The House notes that DA councillors of its embattled Cape Town caucus have been banned from speaking to the media or posting on social media without express authority of a DA censor, Thomas Walters. That is also the Deputy Chairperson of the Federal Council. Notes further that this move was forced by infighting in the DA Council and calls on the FedEx to also act against Honourable Premier Zille, who's regularly continuing with her colonial praising tweets.
Thank you. Honourable Dianki, there is an objection, so it will be recorded. That statements was two sessions ago. We are now busy with motions without notice. Thank you. I see the Honourable Mackenzie. I see the Honourable Diana.
Speaker, I move without notice that this House commends all leaders of Mitchells Plain and Sikwalo who attended the meeting this morning to sort out the differences over the table and commend them for bringing calm to the Mitchells Plain area. I so move.
Are there any objections? There are no objections. I see the Honourable Diana.
Thank you, Speaker. I move that the House notes and welcomes the commitment and plans by Police Minister Becky Cele to combat crime and drugs in the Western Cape streets by, amongst others, deploying more police to the province. Notes further and commends the move to not militarize our suburban streets by deploying the army, and calls on the Western Cape government for accelerated actions to rid our streets of gangs and drugs. I thank you.
Thank you. Are there any objections to the motion? Sorry. It's good. Okay. We are wrapping up motions without notice. I see the Honourable Bierwinkel. I see the Honourable Dianki. And then I see the Honourable Mackenzie. You may proceed, Member Bierwinkel.
I move without notice that this House notes and commends...
Order, please, members. You have a speaker on the floor.
I move without notice that this House notes and commends COSATU Western Cape Secretary Tony Ehrenreich for his enormous contribution to the struggle of workers in this province. He waged for so many years. Notes further that Comrade Tony, who served as a shop steward, official and provincial secretary of COSATU since 1989, will not stand for that position in the Provincial Congress this year, and wishes him well for his future endeavours.
Are there any objections to the motion? There's an objection. It will be recorded on the order paper. Sorry, Honourable Dagmar.
Order. Sorry, did the DA, in particular Mr. Wiley, object to the motion by Tony Ehrenreich?
Minister Fritz.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Violent activities of his workers.
So it is noted. It will be printed on the order paper. Order, please, members. Can we compose ourselves? We're nearly through the day. It was Honourable Dianki, and then it was Honourable Mackenzie, and then I will go to Honourable Gopi, and then we'll do the next round after that.
That the House welcomes the raid by the Hawks on a number of George municipal offices, business premises, and private homes during a search and seizure sting operation. Notes further the operation was prompted by allegations made by individuals about the regular tender procurements and procedures, condemns the DA for not acting timeously when these allegations were initially brought to its attention, and commends the Hawks for the swift action.
Are there any objections? There are objections. It will be printed on the order paper. I see the Honourable Mackenzie members. Order. Can we just get some order, please? Minister Bradal, may I request that you and the Honourable Dugmore engage outside the chamber? Het is 'n ernstige saak wat julle nou mee oor praat. I see the Honourable Mackenzie.
Speaker, I move without motion that this House in the strongest terms condemns the violence, destructions of property that took place during the recent Sikwalo unrest in Mitchells Plain. Further calls on the Minister of Police to allocate more public order police to the Western Cape.
Are there any objections to the motion? Is that an objection? No, we are busy with motions without notice. It's the same thing, Honourable Chacha. Sorry, that's a workshop. After Honourable Mackenzie, Honourable Gopi, I recognize you. Sorry, my apologies. It's without.
Voor ek ook without motion gaan. Motion without notice that the House notes that South African law professor Steve Cornelius resigned from the IAAF in protest against the Caster Semenya regulation, which he say are aimed to outcasting her, and applauds him for taking a stand against unfair targeting of the South African athletes. I so move.
Are there any objections? There are no objections agreed to. We had a pecking order after Honourable Gopi. Well, I'll start with Honourable Dugmore. I see Honourable Diana and then Honourable Magaka. I will get to you, Honourable Chacha.
Speaker, I move without notice that this House notes with concern that the national bus strike of over more than 2 weeks continues to cause havoc in the Western Cape and negatively impacts on the lives of our commuters, the functioning of businesses as well as of government, and calls for the speedy resolution of differences so that transport services can normalise and resume.
Are there any objections to the motion? No objections agreed to. I see the Honourable Diana and then...
Thank you, Speaker. I move that the House notes and condemns the farmers who were caught stealing water from the Berg River that was meant to supply the drought-stricken West Coast municipalities for domestic, industrial and agricultural use, and calls on National Government's Department of Water and Sanitation to charge all these offenders, as it seems the Provincial Department is not doing anything about this crime. I so move.
Are there any objections to the motion? Yes. There is an objection. It will be printed on the order paper. I see the Honourable Magaka.
Thank you, Speaker. I move without notice that the House notes and welcomes the appointment of former Western Cape Premier Ibrahim Rasool as the head of the ANC's 2019 election campaign in the province, and wishes him well in discharging his responsibilities.
Order, please.
I thank you.
Are there any objections? There are objections. It will be printed on the order paper. Members, can we get some order, please? Remember, we're still honourable members. Let's go back to basics. The next person was the Honourable Chacham.
Thank you, Speaker. We move that the House notes and welcomes the launch of Lesedi Skills Academy by the National Minister of Trade and Industry, Rob Davis, in Atlantis last week. and further notes that the academy is established to address the needs for skilled artisans and close the gap, particularly in the nuclear and broader energy sector, as well as associated industries, and commend the Minister for the initiative. Thank you.
Are there any objections to the motion? No objections. Agreed to. I see Honourable Magaka, I see Honourable Dugmore. Order, please, members.
Thank you, Speaker. I move without notice that the House notes and condemns Honourable Premier Nzili's latest Twitter outburst on colonialism and claiming it helped to end slavery in Africa, and calls on the DA to be consistent on its implementation of its so-called Delilah Clause by recalling this premier that consistently brings the party into disrepute and controversy.
Are there any objections? There are objections. The motion will be printed on the order paper. I see the Honourable Chacham. I see the Honourable Dugmore.
Minister again. We move that the House notes and welcome the recommendations by a study commissioned by the Western Cape Department of Agriculture on the significance of a Philippi horticultural area, which vindicated the ANC with its findings, which include, amongst others, that the loss of the Philippi farmlands would result in the loss of thousands of jobs, loss of millions of rents to the regional economy, and would cause a spike in the local price of vegetables and destabilize Cape Town's food security. And further notes that the study recommends that the area had to be protected by legislation and that the aquifer has to be managed and monitored, and crime needs to be addressed, and calls for the Honourable MEC Wendy to ensure that all recommendations are fully implemented.
Are there any objections to the motion being... Members, I have to pose the question. Are there any objections to the motion? There are no objections. I see the Honourable Dugmore.